Well, I wanted to welcome all of you to this class on the Holy Sacrifice of the Mass. This is the third class, but we haven't even really started to go through the Holy Mass yet. So today I'm going to begin there. And the very first prayer, the very first thing we do at Mass is we bless ourselves. The Asperges that you have at the beginning of every High Mass, or on Sundays anyway, the beginning of Sunday High Mass, is a blessing for the congregation. And you'll notice as that when the priest, after he prays that all of us might be cleansed, he says, "Deign to send thy holy angel from heaven to guard, cherish, protect, visit, and defend all that are assembled in this house." You're begging the holy angels to surround you and help you to assist worthily at the holy sacrifice of the Mass. The blessing, you'll notice, when we start Mass, we always start with the sign of the cross. Whenever you enter church, you start by making the sign of the cross when you enter church with holy water. When the priest is going to give the Asperges, he does not take holy water at the beginning. When they come in, usually when you come in from the sacristy or from the back, the altar server hands the priest holy water and they bless themselves. But when there's an Asperges, he doesn't do that because he is going to have the blessing at the Asperges. It's the same blessing we use when we bless your homes, really. The same blessing that we have in the Asperges. So it's a beautiful verse from Psalm 50, and it's a prayer for cleansing. It's a blessing on the congregation. Now, the Holy Mass begins after we bless ourselves with the sign of the cross. The Holy Mass begins with Psalm 42, the Judica Me. And I know that this prayer, we say it every Mass, and it's so familiar to us, but I wonder if you really realize how beautiful it is and everything that it signifies. This psalm is a psalm of sorrow, a psalm of joy, but a psalm of joy from a heavy heart. It is a psalm of one who is in exile, away from the holy sacrifices that he so longs for. You'll notice that the way the prayer goes is, "Judge me, O God, and distinguish my cause from the nation that is not holy. Deliver me from the unjust and deceitful man." So it's the psalmist is praying that he might not be judged with the rest of this world that is so far away from God. How fitting for us in our world today, in which our world is becoming more and more unchristian. And we're praying that God not judge us with the rest of the world. Distinguish my cause from the nation that is not holy. And how interesting that this psalm was removed from the Mass in about 1966. Before the new Mass came in, they were shortening the old Mass, and one of the changes was to remove Psalm 42. They took it out. And it's very significant to me because it was at a time when the church was going along with the modern world. Instead of rejecting what the modern world was doing, the church was saying, we have to open up our windows, we have to get new and modern, and it rejected Psalm 42 at the same time as being unnecessary. Well, if you read the psalm carefully, you'll see that it is a psalm probably of the Jews when they were in exile in Babylon, and how they were praying again to be able to return to the altars of their forefathers. And I think it's a beautiful psalm then for traditional Catholics especially. We're praying that we might have again the Mass of our youth. I will go unto the altar of God, to God who gives joy to my youth. God is the source of all our joy and our happiness. And I think then you'll see in this psalm it takes on a greater meaning when you take into mind what has happened in the church since 1963, 64, when the changes of the old Mass started taking place. We started missing out on these things. Archbishop Lefebvre said in 1964, he said, I had to go back and start using the rubrics of 1962, because already by 1964, he saw that the changes they were putting into the Mass were affecting his faith. And that's why throughout the 1960s, you had more and more Catholics who just were scratching their heads wondering, what's going on in the church? What's happened to the Mass of my youth? It's all been taken away, or it's disappearing. And finally in 1969, it was completely taken away when they brought in the new Mass. St. Andrew Avellino, whose feast day was in early November, he was a very holy priest, and he celebrated Mass with great devotion. And as he was beginning Mass in his elder years, he had a stroke right at the foot of the altar. And he kept repeating the words, "I will go unto the altar of God." And the server repeated the answer, "To God who gives joy to my youth." And then St. Andrew said those words again, and the server repeated the words, wondering, what's wrong with Father? But he was having a stroke, and he died right there at the foot of the altar at the beginning of Mass, saying, "I will go to the altar of God." I think it's a beautiful way to die. I wish I could die that way. That would be a nice way to die, wouldn't it? To die celebrating the Holy Mass. This psalm then is a longing to be with the Lord. It's a longing to be at Mass, to be with God. They used to pray it as the priest was coming into church. They would sing this psalm or pray it as they are processing in, which, would be fine if that's all the Novus Ordo Church had done, but they completely removed it from the Mass, so it's a very sad loss. At the end of this psalm, the priest says the beautiful words, again from the Psalms, "Adjutorium nostrum in nomine Domini." Our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth. This is a beautiful prayer. I think this is a prayer that we all should say whenever we are in trouble or we need God's help. That is, we're reminded in this short verse that God can do all things. And even though what we're seeing before us is something very, very difficult, very hard to take care of, for God it's an easy thing. He can do it like that. And so we say, our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth. God can do all things. He made heaven and earth. This problem I'm having is a little thing to Him. It's easy for Him to take care of. And the reason I want to mention this is because I want to encourage you to use this verse as a prayer. To say, "Adjutorium nostrum in nomine Domini." Whenever you're struggling with something, to say, our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth.